into her role at the White House, Tchen received numerous awards for her work as a lawyer. Tina is now leading the Chicago office of the Buckley Sandler law firm. We look forward to hearing what she has to say about the future of gender equality. So everyone, please join me welcoming Tina Tchen.
Well, good morning. Well, thank you very much for having me here, and I really want to thank Sally, which is a real honor to meet you. Paulette and Andrew did a great job up here. Amazing story. It was terrific. And, you know, I am a long-time Women's Foundation person. I was on the board of the Chicago Women's Foundation for many years. I attended all the luncheons, and they do luncheons in DC because they don't wake up that early to do breakfast for the Washington Area Women's Foundation. You know, I am just so pleased to be here with all of you supporting the Canadian Women's Foundation. It's kind of great to come north of the border. You're in a country where immigrants are welcome. You care about gender equity so much. Your cabinet is, balanced between men and women. And you all don't have to wake up every morning to a new Twitter storm. We sort of have to do that. So going home is going to be a little bittersweet. But I will say that, it is home. It's home. And even as we, your neighbors to the south, go through what some of us may call our time of trial, it's a home that I feel even more committed to defending and to making sure that our people, our values, and our place in the world emerges intact from this period. I became a lawyer. I practiced corporate law for 23 years, but always worked on issues concerning women and girls, trying to get the Equal Rights Amendment passed, rewriting the state of Illinois' rape laws, fighting for reproductive rights, supporting political candidates who support women and girls, and along the way, long enough ago that none of us can remember how, I met a guy with a funny-sounding name and big ears and his smart and savvy wife, and became one of his early and most consistent supporters. And in an example of how you never know where circumstances will take you, that friend of mine winds up running for president and winning. And then he asked me to join the new administration, first as the director of what we called the White House Office of Public Engagement, which was the president's outreach office. Then I added being executive director of the White House Council on Women and Girls, and moved in 2 years later to what we call the East Wing. The president is located in the West Wing. The First Lady is located in the East Wing. I moved over to the East Wing to be the First Lady's Chief of Staff in 2011, and that's where I finished out my 8 years. On a more fun note, I quickly found myself outside Kensington Palace, greeting Prince Harry. This was kind of fun. Or, remarkably, watching the President and First Lady dance with 104-year-old Virginia McLaren. Ms. McLaren was a DC resident. She's still a foster grandmother at 104. Despite the fact living about 2 miles from the White House, she had never set foot in it before until this moment, where she is excitedly saying, "It's a Black President or First Lady." And then they started dancing. It was terrific. It was terrific. Now, one of our very special moments came last year, in March of 2016, when your newly elected Prime Minister and his family made their first foreign state visit to us. This is the Trudeau family arriving at Andrews Air Force Base. Now, it was our last year in office, and so we were already feeling pretty nostalgic. The President and Prime Minister clearly enjoyed each other in the Oval Office. And meanwhile, Mrs. Obama and Mrs. Gregoire Trudeau had a great time promoting our Let Girls Learn initiative to support international adolescent girls' education. Now, I learned through my work in the Council on Women and Girls the importance of working collaboratively across disciplines, across subject matters and interests to combat sexual assault on campus, which is an epidemic in the United States where 1 in 5 young women and 1 in 16 young men will experience sexual violence before they graduate from college. In order to combat that, we created a task force that included not just the Department of Education and the Department of Justice, but also Health and Human Services to provide services for victims, the Department of Defense, who was working to combat this issue in the military and in military academies, and even the Centers for Disease Control, who had public research on the best interventions. We need, as a movement, to do more collaboratively if we're going to be successful at changing people's lives. So as a movement, we need to be more holistic in our approach and address women's whole lives and work together when there's so much work to be done. And that's what we're trying to do with something we call the United States of Women, which was a conference that we held last year, a summit of 5,000 women to celebrate the work of our administration on women and girls, but also to bring together activists from across those issues at the federal, state, and local levels and coordinate our resources to better the lives of women and girls. We had the president speak, we had Oprah interview the First Lady, and we are continuing that organization now that we've left the federal government as the United States of Women to organize that work and keep amplifying it. Now, I'm often asked when I travel, what do I think now as the current administration rolls back so much of our work? And yes, we are seeing many of our policies and executive orders, some of which we spent years trying to study before implementing, getting rolled back in just a matter of months. But I have learned that social change doesn't happen just through policy pronouncements in capital cities like Washington and Ottawa. Real change happens in people's living rooms, their local school districts, in rooms like this one, where people from across the community, business, social service agencies, activists, students, parents, come together to improve the lives of others in their community together. And sometimes, from national office, you can nudge that change along and start to see real cultural shifts that will happen and outlast elections and move things forward. Now, despite the fact that it's been 54 years since it's been illegal in the United States to pay women less than men for doing the same job, and it's been 53 years since sexual harassment on the job was outlawed, women in the United States still make, on the average, only 80 cents for every dollar a man makes, and African American women and Latinas make even less. Women are nearly 50% of the workforce in the U.S., yet only 6% of CEOs and just over 20% of directors. Something the president talked about a lot, which is that the United States is the only industrialized country without a national maternity leave policy. We're actually, I say industrialized countries sometimes to be charitable, but actually we're only one of 2 countries in the entire world without a maternity leave policy. We don't even have a national sick leave policy, which means that 45% of American workers, or 50 million people, have to make a choice about whether to go to work or lose their jobs when they're ill. And we're currently seeing in the entertainment industry, as Sally mentioned, that gender discrimination, sexual harassment, and worse in the workplace are sadly still present, and it's not just in the entertainment industry at all. So you may ask, why do I see progress? Why am I optimistic? Well, first of all, I think it's important here to acknowledge that progress gets made, oftentimes because of the courage and the conviction of individuals who step up. Most recently, the women who have come forward to talk about the abuse and the harassment that they endure in their workplaces and in their efforts to advance their careers deserve our support. And I know exactly why it took them so long to come forward. From time immemorial, women who speak out when they have been attacked have not been believed, have been subject to further abuse and ridicule, have seen their futures crushed. It's why so few rape victims come forward to report. It's why we have an epidemic of sexual assault on campus and yet so few are held accountable. But make no mistake, it is progress that this is coming out into the open. And we must continue to reform our schools, our criminal justice system, and our workplaces to make change. It's no longer conservative lawmakers saying no one needs paid leave or affordable child care. The subtext to that statement is because you shouldn't actually be working if you're having kids. But we're at least now debating how to provide paid leave and how to make child care more accessible. And it's no longer bosses saying you have no choice but to do what I say, even if it's illegal assault. Instead, those bosses are losing their jobs and their companies are in trouble. And this is a huge shift. And the starting point for making change is to recognize that change is needed. And we can't lose sight of that, even as specific policies or work we did in our last administration gets chipped away. Because the culture change has already happened, and we are not going back. Educating women is a vital link to global peace and security. I will say for me, I don't really need a study to demonstrate that because I would submit there is a reason why the Taliban shot Milhalo Zorsazai on the school bus, and why the Boko Haram kidnapped 200 girls from their school. Because they know that the easiest way to disrupt a society and keep it unsafe is to keep its girls uneducated and afraid. Through that leadership and giving and sisterhood that you have, this is what gives us all hope and belief in progress and a rededication to making change happen.